Ladies and gentlemen, we are live here. Hopefully, you guys tell us. Let us know how we're sounding, how we're looking, if you can see, hear us, and everything like that. I am joined today by. I thought it'd be a good idea to bring my golf coach onto the channel. Been working on my swing,
Yeah.
and wait, no, I'm sorry, that's next week. This is the PodFather of WordPress, Matt Medeiros, brother. I've been on your channel several times. Always appreciate it when I'm there. Always have a good chat in the DMs as well, and some of the descriptions and marketing promo material for this. I told the people all about it. Really appreciate just off the top here what you've done for me so far in this space, because you've given me a lot of wisdom. So I can't thank you enough for that, and I'm very happy to have you on the channel now. How are you today, good sir?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure not to have to sort of drive the ship, as it were. And now it's great to be to see the young Padawan getting slightly better at this at this live stream thing, at this interview or debate.
live.
Is it an interview or a debate, Mark?
Well, we'll talk about
what
that,
is it?
buddy, because that's a great topic. That is a really great topic that I know we've already had some offline conversations about. So I'm sure we'll get into that here. We'll say hello to a couple of fine people. Max, what's up, brother? Thank you for being here. Steve, thank you for being here, brother. Looking good, sounding good. Love that. Charlie, thank you as well for being here. Yeah, so real quick too, do you want to just give the people, anybody that doesn't know you, which I find very difficult to believe that somebody wouldn't know you in this on this live stream, but anybody watching, would you like to give a little bit of a shout out about kind of what you do, just quick little background?
Yeah. So I full-time job at Gravity Forms, one of the longest standing premium plugins in the WordPress space. Help them with their podcast breakdown. That's fortnightly, roughly, podcast that comes out all about the Gravity Forms universe, third-party developers, all the fun stuff happening with Gravity Forms. You can check that out, gravityforms.com/breakdown. And the thing that I've been working on for the last few years is the WP Minute at the WPMinute.com. Prior to that, it was mattreport.com, which was the WordPress entrepreneur podcast stuff that I did dating back to 2011-ish is I think when that came out. And then prior to that, I ran an agency for a decade in the WordPress space. Grew up in the car industry. Family owned some car dealerships, and been in sales and sort of business building all my life. And that's sort of where that whole agency life compounded from. Did a stint at Pagely, which is a hosting company, which was acquired by GoDaddy. I left before they got acquired by GoDaddy. Was there for 3 years. Spent some time in the audio space, working at a podcast hosting company for my love of podcasting, and that's the general medium that I like to publish on. I'm not like the young kids, Mark, where TikTok and Snapchat. Do you guys still use Snapchat? Is that still a thing?
I do, but it's just, I don't know, maybe even the younger generation than me does a little bit more. There's a couple conversations back and forth on there, but it's not really popping in my life. But you are a decorated man, my friend. You are in so many different spaces. You have so much experience. Like I said, that's why I like chatting with you. Always learn something. So appreciate the work you do now. Also, drop some links in the chat there, WPMinute.com, and then WP Minute YouTube channel as well. I'm repping the Thriving shirt.
Yeah.
Purchased off the website. Go get your Thriving shirt over at the WPMinute.com. It's dope.
Thriving Tea, yeah, that was a fun project. I've launched a few T-shirts, as I think you have as well in your professional career. A few T-shirts around WordPress, specifically like stuff for the Matt Report brand. But then I had done years ago a 5-star review T-shirt, like the 5 stars in WordPress.org. So that's fun, and I do this new one here for Thriving because, hey, I believe that WordPress should continue to thrive, and some of the proceeds go to the WordPress Foundation to make that happen.
Love it. And I think that's kind of like you segued us perfectly there. So, and to kind of set the scene a little bit here. Obviously, like we talked about, and I said earlier, we talk a lot online on your channel, now on my channel, in Slack, on Twitter, offline, whatever. lot of different thoughts. It's a very interesting time, I feel like, to be in the WordPress community. And the people that follow me know that I just kind of got in here. You've been in here for a long time. You've seen it go through the cycles of different stuff. You've seen it grow up. You've seen it evolve. I mean, let's just kind of start there for a second. When you make a t-shirt, as an example, that says thriving on it, like WordPress is thriving, what does that mean to you? Do you truly believe WordPress is thriving? I mean, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying, like, what's the definition to that? If somebody said, "Hey, is WordPress on the uptick, on the, on the downtrend?" Like, what's the just the general feel from
Yeah.
your perspective?
So I think so. This actually started. I wasn't the one who coined the thriving term. That was something that Josefa Hayden Chomphosy talked about in. Oh man, time's escaping me. Was it this past 2023 State of the Word? I believe it was. I don't think it was 2022. I believe it was 2023 in November, December, whenever they had that last one. And she said that we're looking at WordPress, at this piece of software that has permeated the web with so many websites, so many people using it. Right, people still learn about it every day, but there is a sort of plateau potentially happening. You can look at some stats. It's like zero point 0.1 millimeters of a chart of where it adjusts every now and again. So it's not like crashing and burning by any stretch of the imagination. But I think what Josefa, Matt, and leadership have identified is, in order for this thing to continue to grow, it's not going to be a feature. It's not going to be a new block. It's not going to be an API. It's going to be, us humans, the community, and folks who love WordPress, love using WordPress, or reap the benefits of WordPress, to continue to spread the good word, and maybe sometimes the bad word of WordPress, the good and the bad of the software. And I believe it's her attempt, or their attempt, to continue to make WordPress a thriving piece of software and a thriving community, is that we all kind of get behind it and support it with its flaws and its benefits. So that term, I don't think, can be trademarked by WordPress. So that's number one. Like, I was like, I want to make a t-shirt that help this, but not using the WordPress logo for sure. And I don't believe any of the icons are trademarked. There's bits of Gutenberg if you put a magnifying glass and look at the t-shirt. So I was like, oh, this could be a fun way to, create something cool and also give back to the foundation. So thriving for me is, even if you disagree with even the direction or leadership, there's a cordial, understanding that, hey, this software still benefits all of us, right? If your competitor contributes a line of code to WordPress, it helps you, right? Because WordPress is getting better. Somebody is creating a piece of content around WordPress. Maybe you're competing with other YouTubers or whatever for views and subscriptions and all that stuff. The more that folks are still, doing this, it's helping WordPress. And, I really think that WordPress is an important piece of software for, many reasons. Publishing, number one, but number two, it affords an opportunity for folks like you and I to have a professional career in this space. It can also, have a big impact on folks who are getting into tech, who want to learn the web, as I did. It's how I learned a lot of the web, was trying to unpack WordPress, trying to figure it out. Things are a lot easier, but also a lot harder today with so much JavaScript and things like that. But I still think it's a fantastic piece of software to help onboard people into the web, like understanding what a server is, understanding what a domain is, DNS. Like, these are all core level technologies that, if you're going to understand WordPress, like, you should understand these technologies too, because it helps you understand how the entire internet communicates with one another. So I think it is a fantastic piece of software for those types of benefits and opportunities for people as well. So yeah, I just want to make sure it continues to thrive and have the debates, have the discussions, and put out the content that helps the whole industry.
I love that. You're obviously, I'm sure, I know you've said it many times publicly as well, but in a lot of our conversations, you are from what I've gathered, you're a staunch open source guy. Like, so obviously you love WordPress and you love other technologies and things like that, podcasting as well, just like this nature of data ownership, open source. And as we know in the WordPress community, that is one of our biggest assets. And like we've talked about here, debating, having conversations, all that sort of stuff. Kind of, to me, the most interesting thing when I came into this space, I thought I was just gonna like be making like technical content and like teaching people, what I know and learning from other people about business and technology. And what I've quickly found out is that I don't know if this is like this in other tooling environments and communities, but it is like quite, I don't want to say, I don't want to use the word political in a sense, but there's a lot of different schools of thought bordering on like the idea of like my way is one way versus the other way versus this tool is better than this tool, which is makes sense. I mean, it just ends up happening when you have an ecosystem that is vast as WordPress. And, again, with a lot of your content that, we've talked about and I've watched over the course of like the past year or whatever, like I appreciate your perspective on it a lot of times, because even though you're championing, I can't say that word, WordPress, you do also like have like an actual opinion on the stuff, and you look at it from like a logical and really a business owner perspective, like kind of like thinking about all that sort of things. So I mean, I don't really necessarily have a question there, but like has it, let's, from a wisdom perspective, has it always kind of been like that, or has it gone through different times, and like what's that kind of looked like from your tenure?
So it's really about there are people who are far more open source advocates, right? They are running the Graphene phone, which is an open source phone that doesn't have any data capture, or certainly not a Google or an iOS device. They're running Linux. There are people who are super fanatics about open source, and while I appreciate that perspective, I'm not that aggressive with open source. I certainly trust it, will defend it, and I think it is very important. What I really like about this stuff is the freedom of choice, right? And with my content. So people say, well, okay, and I think you made like a joke to me once, like, oh, you're an iOS guy, but you love open source WordPress and the open web. For me, it's about the movement of like my content, my ideas, my ability to publish and create things with WordPress and the open source stack, right? What used to be Linux, Apache, PHP, MySQL, the LAMP stack, way back in the day. Now there's a lot different technologies in there, but the idea is I can kind of move these things around the web to different servers, also running open source OSs, and like do this stuff. Like I can publish, this is my content. I'm not really I don't really have anything on my phone that I'm like, oh God, like it's not allowing me. It's my contacts. Big deal, right? Photos, I have them, backed up on a memory stick. I'm not really worried. That's why I'm not as like a super fanatic. And yeah, sure, data and all this other tracking, that's a whole other argument. But for the WordPress side, for the web side, I don't want, like we saw in the Twitter sphere yesterday or this morning about, Webflow, and all of a sudden somebody changes the rules on you that you can't do this thing with your content. Right, which is what I saw early days with Facebook, when everyone was like, "Oh yeah, come to Facebook, start a Facebook page, get all your business friends and contacts on there, build this Facebook page, get to 1,000 fans on Facebook." There's a whole thing. It's like a whole industry on how to like teach people how to grow their Facebook page, and then Facebook pulled the rug and turned it into a pay for play system. Those types of things, those types of ethics, is why I really love WordPress. Plus that open source nature allows somebody to unpack WordPress literally and see how it was built and learn from it, right? So like I was saying earlier, like somebody who can take this piece of software, educate themselves, or reach out to the community and get educated, and then do this thing without any kind of barrier. Like you can literally just download it to your laptop or desktop, whatever, and you can start learning how this piece of technology is put together and start communicating with people to ask, how does this work? How does that work? And then build something for yourself, whether that's your own website or your own business, consultancy, or just learn how like the web works. Like that to me is super important. And that's my angle on open WordPress. And it's all, developed out in the open. There is, open communication. air quotes, open communication. We all have a chance to, to say something. Will it, will that affect actually, will that change actually get affected? Who knows? Really depends. But there's we got WordPress 6.6 coming today. I believe if everything's still on track. And we were talking about this in the WP Minute Slack channel. I complained about the command palette. Well, I complained about getting to template parts in the editor, site editor, and how like convoluted that is, because I'm always forgetting, like, how can I get to template parts? And I was like, well, we have this command palette, but I can't get to template parts, a critical component to building a website, a WordPress website. And I tweeted out, you were like, hey man, stop complaining, be the change you want to see. So I was like, he's absolutely right. And this is open source WordPress. So I went to GitHub. I created an issue about, hey, I think the command palette should be able to load template parts. I should be able to hit Command K and go right to template parts, a critical component to building a website, because it doesn't exist. It used to exist, and then I think they pulled it or something. So anyway, I put that issue request in, and then Brian, friend of the show, Brian Cords, chimed in and started actually building it. And then I think he needed some help from other people to like get it 10% rest of the way. And then somebody else came in, built the rest of it, connected it in, and it's going to ship into WordPress 6.6. I could never do that with my phone, right? Or my Mac. It's amazing. It's a tiny little thing. Maybe it goes out maybe they take it out someday, but that's amazing to be able to have like that kind of impact and that kind of change on a massive piece of software. And that was the first time that I've ever done that for the software, to like actually get a feature or a thing added to WordPress. I've certainly voiced my opinion before about like the direction and stuff like that. But that kind of access is tremendous. And I think that, we should all want for this piece of software. Again, whether you're, loving the direction of it or not, I think we should all, continue to give back at that capacity.
I was the cause of your first GitHub issue. Did I hear that right? Like putting your first GitHub?
Well,
for that?
I feel like I've been giving you way too many kudos lately. Far more than you deserve. You just showed up, Mark. But yes, you did. You were the catalyst of pushing me over that. And I'm like, okay, I'll show him. I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I did. And because of that, we can get to template parts through the command palette.
Bravo. I don't have a soundboard here, but if I did, I'd play a little applause. So awesome. Let me ask you a quick question on that though. Like when you say that you can't do that in other areas, like obviously you can't do it to that extent. Like you probably don't know like developers of like Android or iOS or what have you. And like we don't have those connections. They're not going to build that. So I do understand the idea of open source there. But like I think there's a fundamental like misconnection for me, because like there's a lot of platforms like SaaS platforms that do have like feature request boards though, and then because like this is all the stuff we're talking about is obviously related, but this kind of goes, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but this goes to like the Webflow conversation, where like if your customers are asking for something and you have a way to grab all of that information from people, like something that you asked for, I feel like should have been like a no-brainer. You should have put it in a feature request board, should have got upvoted 1,000 times. So my point is like, how is that mechanism different than the open source side? Like, is there a piece that I'm missing there, or is it just because it's like you can see how it's working and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's vastly different from like what we'll call corporate infrastructure versus open source infrastructure. There are things like at Gravity Forms and all of the jobs that I've been at, Castos prior to that, Pagely prior to that. Feature requests are great, and it's great to have a product board and stuff like that, and people to vote, and it's a great thing for community and for the brand and for the product. But that certainly doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get prioritized anytime soon. Mm-hmm. And especially such a maybe tiny thing like this, accessing template parts through command palette. But the wonderful thing about open source is that somebody like Brian can come in and be like, you know what? I literally think I can tackle that right now. I think I can do that right now. Write the code for it, present it, and then the other people can be like, yeah, makes perfect sense. There's no we don't have to go to the sales team, the marketing team, the CTO, and be like, is this going to be like customer success teams, and be like, is this the thing should we ship this? Should we do this? There's not that kind of hierarchy. There is for like the bigger features. obviously, like the big changes in features of WordPress, those are the things that get heavily debated. But something like this, very easy for somebody to just pick up on and be like, yeah, I'm just going to write the code for that and do it. Whereas if it's like a typical thing, a typical company, yeah, it's nice. People can vote for it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to match with the goals of the business, which might generally be revenue. So it's like, is this the thing that's going to grow revenue for the business or get us more customers kind of thing? Because I've seen features sit for quite some time, on products at companies that I've worked at.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Okay. We got a couple comments here we could talk about from Andrew Palmer. What's up, brother? Happy. Thank you so much for joining the stream. Elementor have made massive strides in onboarding, in my view, due to offering built-in hosting. They're the Wix of WordPress hosting. Full packages, full hosting, and WordPress through and through. And I think there was a follow-up here as well. Maybe hosts and WordPress need to get together and get some sort of onboarding sorted to help thrive. I've seen this sentiment echoed a lot right now. And I think that, I don't know, I'm interested to get your thoughts on it. We've probably chatted about it a little bit, but like the idea of a WordPress onboarding experience, which, I mean, there's a lot of things in the pipeline, it seems like, and moving around a little bit from the core side of things and like the .org side of things. And then obviously how does like .com play into that? But what is your thoughts just high level on the onboarding stuff?
Yeah, I'm going to default to my usual excuse for the project is that there's just so many things that's just one thing that can't, get off the ground. Onboarding, that is, like a proper onboarding, which is odd because I believe it's either WooCommerce or Jetpack teams have an onboarding component, I guess you could call it, or module that people can incorporate into their plugins. Like they built their onboarding wizards for Jetpack and WooCommerce. I forget which one it is. I think it might be Jetpack. They built an onboarding scaffolding that any plugin or theme could bring in and say, okay, like you've already built it. It's step 1, step 2, step 3, right? And I'm sure it's just a framework of how to build an onboarding wizard. And you could peel that off and put it right into WordPress. Why hasn't it happened? Probably because how do you prioritize the priority of the onboarding in the open source project? That's just my first thought on why it hasn't happened, because technically it should be very easy. The challenge is how are we creating this onboarding wizard for the millions of people that touch this piece of software that aren't, advanced users, they're not professional users, they're not power users, they're a mix of people. They're just, hey, I just want to publish words with this thing. Somebody told me this is great. I'm selling cupcakes. Somebody told me this was great. I'm an agency owner. Somebody told me this was great. How do you start to mold that onboarding? And I think it's going to come sooner rather than later. But it is definitely a missing component. Elementor and Jetpack, again, all of these, anything with a lot of options to set up has an onboarding wizard. So it is a little bit baffling that we don't have one in core. And I agree with Andrew. I think if you're looking for a Wix relatively close, companion in the WordPress world, then Elementor is it. Though I've been getting hit up by somebody on Twitter that wants me to put Elementor on blast about their AI stuff and how you can't disable it in the ads and stuff like that. But yeah, I think Elementor is the closest, to that onboarding experience that we all look for. And look, by the way, web hosts also have their own onboarding. And I don't know if that's a play into it where maybe the sentiment is let the host create an onboarding wizard that helps their own customers, because each web host, you need hosting for WordPress regardless. So if it's going to live in whichever playground on the web, maybe the feeling is let that playground figure out the onboarding. Maybe that's the play that should be had. I don't know. I'm just theory crafting here, but just like with Data Liberation Project, maybe there's like a onboarding liberation project where each web host has to build and showcase their onboarding wizard, or there's a way to give back to this where even the web host can turn on bells and whistles for their particular environment. Open source that, and then we all, have a way to build onboarding for our clients. Would be an interesting thing too.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with this because I never used Oxygen, but Steve said, why did the WP Powers have such a problem with Oxygen's onboarding wizard? Do you know anything about that?
I don't. Who is WP Powers?
I would assume that's just the apparatus.
Yeah.
Of, WP.
The machine.
Did I make that up, or did somebody said that before me? The apparatus.
Yeah, it's a big world. This whole thing is interesting. I had this discussion with Corey Miller yesterday. We've talked about it. How do you get younger people into WordPress? What does younger people mean? Is it like my kids? Like I'm teaching my 8-year-old how to use WordPress right now. Is that the young age we're looking for? Or are we looking for Mark's age 20 to 29 or whatever? Where's young? There's just so many people that touch this, and the pockets of community are vastly different. Like there's post status, which is a long-standing WordPress community of WordPress professionals, but we don't spend, like I say we because I've been in there for a very long time, like that group doesn't really spend that much time in Facebook groups. But then you go to Facebook groups and there's many, many Facebook groups with 10,000 plus people in each group, especially for page builders. And that's a whole other demographic. And then there's Twitter, and then there's Reddit. Then there's people that don't engage in any of this stuff, that just show up to WordCamp. So it's just like, hey, help me use this WordPress thing. It's not easy, this stuff. And then officialwordpress.org Slack, 40,000-ish people across the globe. It's not easy, but there's just so many different layers to this that I don't think it's ever as dry cut as a lot of people think it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, there's a million topics on my head here and some on our list. I think there's a ton of ways to go here, but you brought up the age thing, so I feel like we should dive into that a little bit because that's a really interesting new development that I've noticed. So, there's obviously, okay, I want to preface this by saying I love all people of all ages. I mean, I'm not ageist in any way here. I'm just observing and trying to report and try to understand. So obviously WordPress is, I feel like the general sentiment from somebody that doesn't use WordPress is that, oh, is that still a thing? Is that dead? Because they don't see it as much as they see like a Wix or a Squarespace or something like that. And there's a lot of people in the world that aren't building websites, so they don't even really understand, But the people that do have to or might need to one day for a business or something like that, I feel like there's this interesting position because with every type of product, if it's for, like a large demographic like this, I think there really is I'm still trying to organize all the data in my head. But one thing that you and I have talked about, and Brendan O'Connell and I just did a live stream about this kind of the other day, talking about some of these things, because we've been going to meetups and we met great people. Steve in the chat, we met Steve through there. There's a lot of great meetups. Like meetup.com is a really good, I guess it started a while ago. I'm sure the actual WordPress scene there. And I know WordPress, the idea of a WordPress meetup is not new to anybody. But I think obviously before COVID time, a lot of it more was in person, but now there's a lot of virtual stuff going on. And I'm literally in meetings with people out in California area, West Coast, whatever. And a lot of great knowledge in these meetups and a lot of really good people. And there's also a lot of DIYers and things like that. So there's a couple things going on. There's professionals with DIYers, giving information, things like that. Literally it's like boots on the ground type stuff. It's literally trying to understand how people are navigating either FSC, the block editor, page builders, just WordPress in general, hosting, right? That's another big topic. It's very interesting to see all that. And I think the other thing, though, that I've noticed 100% is I am always the youngest one in these meetings. And again, there's no disrespect there whatsoever. I'm just saying, it's very interesting to see that the demographic is, and I don't know if that's a thing of a consequence of it being on Meetup, or if it's a consequence of something else or what have you, or just WordPress being the seasoned veteran in the CMS space. But it's just, to me, I look at that on the surface and I'm like, what could I do maybe to kind of be even a a middleman to like the next generation of people building websites, you know? And I think that's a real serious question because, you know, if all of our older generation like retires, stops using WordPress, just like decides to no longer mess around with websites and just deal with their family or something like that, you know, like, you know, what's going to I'm not saying it's going away. I'm just saying like I feel like that's like a constant cycle of again, not a product, but even a project. Like you have to have new people kind of coming up behind, right? So I don't know, big topic, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from my perspective anyway, like if you look at you as an example, you didn't know about WordPress probably until you wanted to start building websites, right? So I'm just guessing. So, and started not only just build websites, but also start a business from it. So maybe if you were just like, hey, I need to make a website for my, you know, my floor hockey rec league, maybe you just ended up on Wix, and that's what you did because it's just I'm just need to make this thing for this organization that I'm a part of. I don't care about the web. But you chose specifically to start a business and start a services business in the web space. So at what age does that normally happen for most people, right? So I look at it from the business perspective is like, are most people going to be like 25 by the time they make that decision? They're certainly probably not going to be 18. Very few of them might be thinking, oh, I'm going to start an agency at 18. So at what point does somebody finally make that leap where they actually care enough to invest in WordPress and the idea of WordPress and the community and all that stuff? It's when they're starting a business, and it's going to be at a certain age for the majority of people. And then if you looked at, well, how do you get kids that are like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, high school, going into college? How do we get them into tech and learning this stuff? WordPress will probably never be the first choice. It wasn't the first choice when I started, when I was in school, and they were offering, you know, coding courses and classes and programs and all this stuff. It wasn't WordPress. It was whatever. It was PHP. It was C++. It was all like these, you know, real fundamental languages, you know, for building software. And I don't think WordPress is a fit for that. It is great. And maybe that's the angle to get the younger like developer generation in, is to like use WordPress as an example of open source community and like putting together a bunch of software to make this big internet thing. You know, I think that's the angle from the developer's perspective. So that's two perspectives right there. Hey, you want to start a business? You're young, you want to start a web agency, you're probably not doing that until 24, 25, maybe relatively out of college, figuring things out. And then that's maybe when you meet WordPress. If we get below that demographic, like, you know, 18 plus, let's say 18 to 25, how do we get them involved in technology? It's positioning WordPress as an example of an open source community and open source stack to build a publishing platform. And look how pliable WordPress is. Like you can use it as, we've talked about this before, 10 years ago, and folks who have been in the community for a while, remember like the years long debate of WordPress. Is it a CMS? Is it a framework for an app? Right? And framework for an app was a thing that lasted for, I think, a couple of years. Andrew, who's in the audience, probably remembers. Like it was a couple of years of people going, I think this is the thing we can build apps with, which was interesting in itself. So getting that younger generation to look at that as a jumping point for their tech career has to be done. I don't know how, but it can and it should, to onboard that younger generation. And then how do you just use how do you get the younger crowd to just use WordPress instead of TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram? That is a massive battle. Blogging, right? How do you get the younger generation to get into blogging and look at WordPress as that tool of choice? That's a super big challenge, because that's when you really need, you know, people talk about, hey, you know, WordPress is getting dumbed down now and we're losing all like the advanced tooling and all this stuff. Well, God, can you imagine a flavor of WordPress that was just, you know, what Tumblr is? And I think, to put the tinfoil hat on, I think that's why Matt was maybe so interested in the Tumblr thing, not just from a social network play, but also like, wow, I could evolve. And I think he said in one of the last interviews that it is the biggest installation of Gutenberg for, you know, outside of WordPress. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what he said. And I think was his way of coming into this and saying, well, if I can get the younger generation to start blogging now with a tool like Tumblr, wouldn't it be amazing if one day, once you level up, you're like, oh, I can take all my Tumblr and put it right into my WordPress website. That's freaking awesome. Like, I wish I could do that imagine if these social platforms made it that easy to take every tweet, every Facebook post, every image, and just pull it into your WordPress site and extract your data. Those are amazing, concepts. So I don't know how to get the younger generation excited about content and blogging other than just being like, look what these social platforms keep doing to your to your data and to your content. They keep monetizing you, locking you in, and like using your data for their own, benefit. Most people don't care, unfortunately. So I don't have a great answer for how to get the younger generation in, but that's how I see it. The business side happens at a certain age, and then the tech learning side can start much younger. We just have to position, WordPress, and somebody has to do it. Like, you have to do it. And I think they're making strides with learn.wordpress.org. There's a new Learn website coming. I think I just saw before we hopped on. Like, slow moving, but those baby steps are coming.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a pretty nuanced thing, but I do you think that, like, everything you say there makes sense? I think that the thing is about, like, kind of ultimately selling it to that type of demographic. Like, for instance, you and I and anybody that's been in it for a while, like, after you've been burned by maybe like a Webflow, as an example, not really burned, we'll talk about that in depth because I got some thoughts there, but after you've dealt with like a Webflow situation like we've seen recently a couple of times or whatever, and at some point somebody's going to be in your ear, you're going to see on like X or whatever and be like, hey, maybe you should try WordPress. Like, at some point you're going to be like, okay, I care about my business, I care about my data, we're going to move over there. But for the young kid, and I say young kid, but I mean like the 18 to 25 range or whatever, that is just wanting to start and doesn't really understand those things. And when when I was coming up, I think, like, and still am coming up, but like when I was in that realm, like, I'm always trying to think of like, what did other people screw up that I could not screw up? Like, learning from your mistakes is great, but learning from other people's mistakes, even better, So it's like, how can we position this to young people and be like, hey, it's almost like you have to say like, hey, look at all these examples of what happened in these people's in other circumstances, whether they used Webflow and now they have to pay $15,000 a year for a website or something like that, whatever on this other thing, versus just why don't we just educate you for 5 minutes on like why open source and data ownership and everything like that is important, and then your obvious next question, if you're intuitive, is going to be like, well, okay, what platform offers that? And then we say WordPress, and then they're probably going to be like, well, is there anything I can do on Webflow and Wix and stuff that I can't do on WordPress? You would think that, but actually that's not the case. Like, you can pretty much do, that's the weird juxtaposition I feel like we're in, where it's like, the bad part about WordPress is that the great part is it's so versatile and so robust if you know what you're doing. The bad part is like, it's like kind of walking into like a jungle in a way. And it's easy to navigate once you get like in a little bit. It starts to open up and you're like, oh, you understand like what's kind of going on to a certain extent. But like before that, it's like, it's extremely daunting, I feel like. And it seems antiquated in a lot of senses from I feel like more public perception. And I've said this before, and I think I got some reasonably good feedback. I feel like as WordPress professionals and people that are in this, we cannot have rose-colored glasses when we're thinking about this, because it's not going to be beneficial to the people outside that don't know it like we know it. So we have to like always be looking at it from their perspective, and like, how can we explain to these people why this is so good in a way that they can understand, not just our peers can understand.
There's a comment from Isaac Feldman: blogging is an old person's game, business game. Like, do you really believe that? Like, is that your thing? Like, this thing is done and outdated.
Yeah.
And then to answer your question, Mark, is how you do that is going to be telling people this is yours. This is your data. This is your site. This is your content. This is your creation. And I don't fully believe that social media is going to win, and it shouldn't win. And you also shouldn't have the belief and just be like, it's done, right? How are we going to, this is insurmountable, because we are learning these lessons every single day about social media, about the media, about our data. How many data breaches have I gone through in the last 4 years for these massive organizations that are supposed to be secure and protecting my data? I mean, my data is all over the place at this point, and people should be more keen and more apt to want to not invest your stuff into these social platforms because you're the product. They're monetizing you, and look what AI is going to do by learning off of all your data that you've already given to social media, and you're not getting any of it. Like, you're not getting any benefit from it. Okay, great. My Twitter timeline is nice and easy, and it recommends some content to me and other people that I like from time to time. And then you go over to Mastodon or the Fediverse or whatever, and you say, well, there's no stream, it's not giving me any content, there's none of this stuff. Well, that's the trade-off, right? Because there's no megacorp algorithm behind it serving you up the fun, scrollable content like TikTok. And it was hard to set up. But the difference is your data isn't flying around to 17 ad networks every second you click on something. I just don't think that people should just give up and say, yeah, it's toast, right? This blogging thing, saving your content, it's just social media has won. If you truly believe that, then yes, it has won. You might have a fear of it right now, but you should also defend WordPress and open source and owning your content. Whether it's Mastodon, WordPress, podcasting with RSS feeds, like, you shouldn't just want for a corporation to win in the content game, in the data game. It'd be foolish. So how do you win? It's not an easy conversation. It's about owning your data. Like, that's the leg up. It's the community, and it's about owning your data. That's the only win. Now, you got to make it sexier than that. And sure, you can mold the app to do different things. Like, maybe there's a version of WordPress, like we said, which is Tumblr and easier and more intuitive for somebody to just come in and blog and post stuff on their own site. And maybe that's the direction we have to move into. But you shouldn't just say it's over, it's done, because if you truly believe it, then it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm pessimistic on people that are younger, sort of, because I think there's you'd have to I feel like you have to explain it to the next gen as like, this is why, and then they're probably gonna react with like, okay, well, I don't think that's gonna happen to me, or I'm not gonna get there, or whatever, or like, that's not that big of a deal to me. I'm just gonna go over here to do this easy thing that was marketed to me in front of a YouTube video. But then you have to kind of follow it up with like actual, I feel like, anecdotal but actual data examples. Like, for instance, like, again, like the things that we see on Twitter, like where, Webflow is like charging more money and things like that, or whatever, when you get to a certain point, anything about, like, again, the data breach type of conversation. I just feel like bringing those things to light and making sure people are considering those before they go that route is definitely something important. And then ultimately they're going to make their decision. And you can only tell people so many times before, like, they actually feel it. And sometimes you have to feel something, even if it's negative, in order to learn something. Like, some mistakes you have to make on your own too. So I don't know if that's for everybody. But I do want to hit on this, because this one, we talked about this. You brought up Isaac's comment about blogging. And then he kind of responded here. I feel like with video conveying something words cannot, generations were born in digital communications, and videos never going to accept words over visual mediums. This about me, and other people do as well, like the typing and the walls of text and like all that sort of shit. Like, it's draining to me that like we sit and we like type huge walls, and like, I don't want to read that, I don't want to type that. I'd much rather send one of my patented voice memos to you, or on Slack, or I'd rather like film a video or go live like this or whatever to explain our things, because I feel like there is a huge perspective of this, or like a piece of this that you can't get from text. Like, I'm talking with my hands, I'm showing inflection. Like, you're actually like, this is how humans started, right? And then we got into the text world with, I don't know, hieroglyphs, and then like actual text and all that sort of stuff. That it was great. But now that we have the ability to transmit, literally, like, we're almost sitting in front of each other or whatever, it's going to even get crazier. Like, that, I feel like, cannot be overutilized. I don't know if it's even possible. I'm not saying we should stop learning how to read, but I am saying that I feel like there is
That's good, Mark. Okay.
or right. But I'm saying that I think that part of it is I think we're in the beginning even still of that, like just the revolution of people, because there's still people that don't feel good about going on video, but I feel like in 20 years that number is going to be even less because it's going to be more normalized. And I just think that right now, and this even talks, I'm on a tangent here slightly, but this is even like when clients ask you about like, hey, how do I get my brand better? It's like, well, before is like post some blog posts or post some like just AI generated blog posts or whatever. It's like, people really at this point, I've said this many times at this point, in a world that's becoming artificial as hell, like it's more important now to be as authentic as possible, because you have to show people that you're actually a real person, not an AI generated thing. So I mean, obviously it's a nuanced topic as all these things are, but I think that there's a big piece of that too, that's kind of that signals to me, like, again, the next gen, like the reason kids are on TikTok is because they can just film stuff, they can edit it real quick and they throw it on there. Like that is I think something that we have to embrace as well, and see if there's any way that all that
I don't understand, like why couldn't that be done with WordPress, right? It's not the video part, it's the algorithm part, and it's the entertainment part, like the keep feeding me this stuff part that keeps people in those apps. Because you can also do that on your own site, but what you are missing is the network effect, right? So this kind of thing can be done. And listen, I'm not saying any of this stuff is easy, and that is the drug. The network is the drug. The network effect, the algorithm, and yeah, the nice little features and filters and all that stuff. But all the content stuff, short of cost, right? Video, hosting, and playback and all that stuff, if you have a large audience or whatever, all that stuff can still be done on your own site. You're just missing the connection to the TikTok network and the Twitter feed and all this other stuff. And it's whether or not you value that. How long is it going to take? How many more years will it take for people to learn those lessons?
Yeah.
I mean, but Isaac keeps bringing in like, no, it's the UI, the experience, the WordPress is lacking. Okay, whatever. it's I don't even, that argument is nothing to me, because it's the idea of it can be if somebody makes it. Make a theme that does that. Make WordPress hosting that does that. What's the difference between Elementor and Isaac Talk? If you made IsaacTalk.com, right? You could make that experience. No one's doing it because there's no business model for it or whatever. But you could make a theme to help somebody post things. It's not that bad.
Yeah. Let me hit on this too, because like this is a great other one from Andrew. So like YouTube still has comments, but it would be great if it could add a video comment. It used to have video replies, I think, long ago. Like, so it's like asynchronous video participation, and like TikTok has that now. So like, there's a couple points here. One, I think I like that. I think that would be a good idea, but that's slightly like outside of the scope. Like what you're talking about with WordPress, and you're talking about that network piece. That is the one thing though that is hard to recreate, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because YouTube has all these people, it's garnished an audience. TikTok has all these people. The idea, the real marketing play is to put content there and drive them to content you own, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, you don't want, like, I don't want my subscribers to necessarily stay on YouTube. Like, yeah, be on there. That's where I'm posting my content, everything like that. But if I'm good, then really what I wanted to get them off there and get them onto my newsletter, or get them onto like literally become a user on my website or something like that. So I don't, it's kind of like
people are looking for easy. That's what that is,
yeah.
Right? It's looking for easy. Look what businesses are doing right now. You're getting hit up now for sponsored deals, and people reaching out, hey, can you do sponsor content? Can you do all this stuff? Why? Because of the cost of SEO performance going through the floor, unless you're a massive brand, right? People want to connect with creators now. Brands want to connect with creators now because they're looking at it. They're looking at it going, holy shit, the only way we're going to get reach is to have humans talking about our content. We can't just optimize the game anymore. We can't just spend on AdWords anymore, because that's getting far too costly, and we can't optimize against that. So the next layer is, let's go sponsor content creators, and that'll help, push our brand until there's a zillion more content creators in the space, and that gets watered down. And then what's the next thing? People will be hiring next year. The buzz will be Microsoft is hiring 25 in-house content, and they already do it, but they're already hiring 25 in-house content creators to run their YouTube channel, and they're going to be hitting the streets, like all these independent content creators doing their thing for these big brands. Like, it's just down to humans, and people won't give up the social media because it has that injection. When I look at podcasting, one of the biggest things is like when people start a podcast and they're like, I can't make enough money off my podcast. I can't get ad revenue. I can't do all this stuff. It's because you don't want to roll up your sleeves and sell directly to a brand, because it's hard work and it might not happen. But people are, looking at YouTube getting into the podcasting game again after Google killed the podcast app, which is hilarious. People are like, oh, thanks for saving podcasting, Google. Wait, they just killed their podcast app that goes out on all Android devices. How are they the savior of podcasting?
They're consolidating. They're consolidating.
Yeah, they're just consolidating, right? Oh, thanks YouTube for being the savior of podcasting, because now we can just hit an easy button and turn on ads. My ads revenue on my channel has dropped like 70% over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, whatever it's been. The same thing. Why root for the megacorp to take over this stuff? You have to. This is just my opinion, and it's probably why I am where I am in the world of WordPress. But I always think about I never look at pay-per-click or optimizing social media to my own fault, because I always think to myself, if I didn't have that, how would I grow this brand? How would I get attention on my content? And it's knocking on doors. It's telling the story. Yes, it's showing up on social media, but I'm not gaming the social. I'm not doing threads all the time. I can't stand it, right? I don't do it. I think about it from, if I don't have this connection to the network, how would I grow my business? Which a lot of people are going to be faced with. They're already faced with it. The small businesses don't want to put in the hard work, et cetera, et cetera. So I always look at it, how do I avoid that drug? Just like you don't drink coffee, I drink coffee. I think to myself, how do I avoid that drug of having, social and pay-per-click and optimizing and doing all this stuff, keyword stuffing, like Twitter threads? I don't do it. Yep. I'm just like, man, here's my content. You like it, you like it. You don't. We move on.
Okay, well, you're saying a lot of stuff. I'm agreeing with it there. I'm understanding it, but like, I need to go a layer deeper, because this is what I do. This is what I bring to the space, I guess. Why is that happening though? Like, this is obviously quite meta at this point, but like, if you take a step back first and you look at like the landscape, I know a lot of people that do not post on Instagram, do not post on Facebook. They just consume the content, right? So they are ipso facto, like they're obviously they're making people money in a way. They're making the corporations money, right? Like, if you're just a consumer of Facebook content, you're looking at ads, right? You're scrolling, you're getting your dopamine hits or whatever, but you're looking at ads and you're making Facebook money because people paid Facebook to put those ads on there. You looked at them, bought or didn't bought, and you made them money. So my thought here is like, if I'm taking logical steps to like where this would go, what the outcome is, what this current situation is now, how many, I don't have data, what percentage of all people on these apps are consumers versus creators? Like, what percentage of them are creators? Can you even like venture a guess? Because obviously there's different levels of creator too, but like active creators that are, at this point, I would say I'm more of a creator than a consumer, because I'm on there, but like I'm not really like on there nearly as much as I was, because once you start creating, you just lose a lot of time that you would have been scrolling anyway. So my thought is like, if it's creators versus consumers in a way, like if it's equilibrium, then how could it ever stop? And especially if there's more consumers, like just that, if you're thinking of it on a scale there, how would you ever, like we're having this conversation and we're talking to creators. We're not really talking to consumers. And they're another piece of that puzzle as well, because they're feeding the fire, putting gas on the fire as well by like being on the app. So I'm just saying, like, what could we do to like help that as well? I mean, just shout into the
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what your goal is. I mean, I would imagine all these like Instagram, for example, would probably want everybody to be a creator because it helps them get more photos, more content, and keep the wheel turning. And at the end of the day, it's like looking at what you want to do for the WordPress thing anyway, like owning that experience is, yes, fine. Leverage social media, put content on social media. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. To me personally, morally, it's like, I don't want to ever say like, they've won. Like I still want to put up the fight because that's just whatever, who I am. But the content that goes up there isn't any content that I'm like, oh my God, I must save this. I must, want this. And the experience would be get the viewer of whoever is consuming that content off of social media and onto my WordPress site as fast as possible. Right. And once they get to WordPress or my website, then I can build the experience how I want. I don't want the experience through Instagram. Like I don't want to sell my product through Instagram store. I'm sure there's a million people out there who are like, but it's a great way to optimize and get sales. Okay, fine. It works for consumer goods, like a pair of shorts or whatever, it works. But I want to get people onto my WordPress site and into my experience. And the content that I put on my site, largely words right now, is stuff that I think is valuable. Like it's not going to go away. You can go and you can search for it. It's not going to get lost in an algorithm. You just have to get there through my domain. That's all I'm saying. Like once you get to the site, it's mine. It's my experience. I can create the experience for, however I want. I just wouldn't say don't have a site, which I'm sure you tell your clients is, well, you don't want to live in this world without some kind of website with your content and your way to engage your customers. You certainly want to have a home base for all this stuff. I mean, this is like 20-year-old strategy, and I don't think it's gone. I don't think it's gone away. You don't want people to give up on it, basically.
Yeah. How much time you got?
I got plenty of time. I got one more hour for you if you want.
Holy cow, man! We're doing a marathon then today. Let's go.
We haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet.
No, we haven't. This has all been we're in warm-ups here. Awesome.
I see Max baiting me with some AI talk. Don't get me started, Max.
Everyone's a lot of AI chats here from Charlie as well. Forget SEO. We need to get AI to know our products. So when people ask which is best, it recommends our products. So like that's a really interesting, obviously topic as well. We've talked to Max over on Bridge Builders recently too. Maddie Eastwood and Brendan O'Connell and I all chatted about that. Very interesting topic. I know you love AI. Mr. Matt Medeiros. So, you have an interesting perspective on it. Did we talk? I can't remember if we talked about it online or offline, but specifically with the AI stuff, like, and I know we'll chat about it in a second here with the interview with Kevin that you did. Talked about, I think, a little bit at the end there as well. So like this whole AI influx that we've kind of been hinting on a little bit here. I mean, I kind of feel like it's a huge aid in certain things because over a year ago or whenever ChatGPT came out a couple of years ago or whatever at this point, like you couldn't just like easily say, hey, write me a blog post and get something. So it's at least like helping in some way to like start a conversation. Is it good? Is it bad? That's a lot of that really depends on the prompt, I suppose. But also like, what is your perspective on what it is like at a 50,000 foot view? Like, do you think that it's new content or do you think it's just, is it creating new things or is it just creating different versions of what already is out there?
I am probably the worst person to ask about this because my bias is it doesn't work for me. And, I don't remember if I said this publicly or talked to you about it, but I wanted notes from my local city council meeting, 2-hour long YouTube video. Where else would I go other than Gemini, right? And it's freaking Google's AI. Throw the YouTube link in there. I wanted to know everything about list any of the questions or concerns or I forget whatever prompt I gave it. And it wasn't just like, tell me the summary of this video. It was like, I'm looking specifically for any conversation and timestamps around tax, water, school department stuff. Like it was a budgetary meeting. It came back with like one sentence. What the fuck is that? It's like, what is this? Yeah. It's 2 hours long. All you did was tell me that like they talked about it. Okay, try it again. Okay, tried another prompt. It doesn't work. Okay, great. Then I go to another tool that I use, which is has some funding by OpenAI, Descript, right? Audio editing tool. Now they're really pushing into video, but their latest update has this whole like what they call the Underlord. It's a marketing twist on their product features for AI. The damn thing cannot like it's like, oh look, make clips in a second. You put in a clip, supposed to make a highlight clip. It can't do it. It gives me nothing. It gives me nothing of substance. Now, flip side, StreamYard, they have a clip AI generation tool, which actually works fantastic. And yesterday was the first time where I was like, wow, this is the first time. You know how many AI tools I've tried for like my podcast and video clips? It's just so lackluster. And it's just like, I could have just made 3 clips myself because I already know what I talked about and I know where it was. I could have just done it and just did it myself manually instead of just wasting this time and the credits and all this stuff. But StreamYard did a fantastic job. And that was the first time I've ever seen that. And I tagged Descript and they want to have a a meeting on how I use Descript and how it failed with me and how StreamYard is working good. So that's a win. Like, yeah, great. Yeah. Good job. Good product company. But even with like the writing stuff, sometimes I'll use it for summaries and I use Claude most often and have been using Claude before all the updates recently because ChatGPT even on like the transcripts and writing summaries, I just kept finding it failing. And it was just like, this is what we're spending trillions of dollars on. It's not even good. Now I did, the other day, have Claude build me this is like way in the weeds. I won't spend time on it, but an investment opportunity. Like if I do this or if I do this, what will happen? And where is my best return on investment for these 2 scenarios? And then build me over the next 10 years, like a chart of things. Now it took me a while to like get to that point, but that more intricate use case, okay, I started to see it working a little bit better because it saved me a bunch of time on like calculations and math and all this other stuff. But for this like content stuff, why? What is it? Like I want something that is scanning my email, adding things to my to-do list on Todoist, seeing things on my Twitter feed and adding things that I know automatically should read, like a real assistant, like something better than this. Like this is just it feels to me like just fluff, but that's just my perspective.
So obviously a lot of thoughts there, but the first thing that I have come to mind is you strike me as somebody who really likes content, likes to produce content. Is that fair, or you just do it because you have to?
No, I like it.
Okay. So like one way that I digest what you just said there is that you're saying, I don't know if it's my psychological mind going here, but like you're saying that
I'm not ignoring AI, by the way. Sorry, I have the chats. I have the chats up. I'm not ignoring AI. I'm just saying it's not good right now. And yeah, I mean, sure. Like I prefaced it with, yeah, maybe it's not the tool, it's me. But also it's just like for the content stuff that I do, because this is the context that I come from, is I'm trying to use it for optimizing the content game. It is not more efficient than what I do when I'm editing my stuff for me.
Some people would say that they're not ignoring Gutenberg. It's just not good right now either. Some people would say that.
Yeah.
That's funny. Anyway, so, but back to the thing here in a second with like your experience so far with AI as an example. I feel like one hypothesis that I have from that is that you like doing content. So like, and you're good at it. So if the AI cannot do what you can do, you like to do and can't do it as good as you, then it's like, well, I might as well just do this myself because I don't hate it enough to really like not want to do it. And I'm pretty good at it. So it's going to come out good. But maybe like other stuff that you don't like to do, you would be like, oh yeah, like I literally do not want to sit here and write a blog post. So I'm going to like try to prompt it to like write something as an example. And I'm probably going to be at least half pleased that I didn't have to do that work. And I could probably vet it and be like, it could be a little bit better. Maybe I tweak it or do something here and whatever. And then you make another great point with the more intricate things, because the idea of AI, at least in one sense, is to save us time, make us more efficient. So it would make sense that if you had a 5-minute task and you could do it in AI with like in 2 minutes, it's like you're not really saving a bunch of time. But if you had like, you know, a 4-hour task and you could save like 3.5 hours of time, do it in half an hour, that would make way more sense just from a efficiency standpoint, which sounds like kind of what you were doing with the investment part of it, that investment example.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, there's just some.
Yeah. I mean, it's what, hey, if you're satisfied with what AI is producing, more power to you, right? Like if you think that this blog post is, and I don't mean this against you, Mark, but maybe I mean it against Charlie. I don't know what his stance is on this stuff, right?
I'm taking offense to whatever you're about to say.
Like if you're happy with that AI generated blog post enough for you to go, perfect, ran the prompt, it made something, publish, cool. But that's just not me. I would never hit publish on that. And I know Andrew's in the audience, he has Bertha. I would not hit publish on that. And I don't think Andrew would say, just go ahead and hit publish on what it produces. Maybe some people are like, that's the way it is, man. That's people aren't reading it anyway, so I'm going to hit publish, and 1,000 words are going to go out there, and I'm just going to move on. Fine, if you're morally happy with that, continue going on. But when do you want to unplug from the matrix? Like, what else are you just shipping? If that's your bar of satisfaction, great.
I would never write a blog post anyway. I'm more of a video guy, so it's totally fine. I'm not hitting publish on that.
Yeah.
Anyway. No,
but this is the same reason why, like, I don't do TikTok and shorts and all this other stuff, because I'm just like, man, okay, maybe I'll repurpose something for shorts, but I'm not like, what short am I going to make today? Because I make content that is just MP3s audio and MP4 long form video. Those two. And the blog and the newsletter that wraps it up. But I don't do the short form stuff because I'm just like, I don't want something that just disappears. I'm not wasting my time with something that disappears.
Yeah. So we got this one from Charlie here. People say the same thing about WordPress. I tried it and I didn't like it because it didn't work for me. Maybe it is the tool maybe it's not the tool you're using. Maybe it's the person using it. Do you feel like that at all? Again, I'm not trying to like personally use you. I'm just using you as an example. But like, do you think that at all, or do you just think like have you seen examples of other people using it and actually getting better results than
I mean, I see people code stuff. I made an app with not an app, but I made a my brother uses it for a lot of like the stock stuff that he's doing and you know, analyzing stuff and coding stuff. Yeah, people use it. It's just, for me right now, it's just not at a level where I am blown away by its either efficiencies or how it slots into my life.
Yeah.
Right?
Gotcha.
Like, why did it take, I don't want to turn this into just like an AI discussion, but like, why did it take so long? I was just venting to my brother about this. Claude just finally introduced, I think you can star
projects.
Not the projects, but you can actually star and put like repeatable processes in a folder or something like that. Either you can just star it as like your favorite. It's like, I mean, at least from my perspective, aren't most people going back to run the same process? Like, why didn't they build the UI to run the same process? It's like, okay, I'm back to write another blog post. I'm back to do another podcast summary. I'm back to do another video description. Give me my little container where I can go in, okay, here's the new source of truth. Create the thing that I need, which I've been asking for 18 times for the last year. And every time I ask you, give me something different.
I think it's pretty simple. You needed to open a GitHub issue like 6 months ago on that.
Yeah,
when you
I'm
first
sure
had this happen.
I'm sure they'll listen to me.
You got, or at least tag them in a mean tweet or something like Descript. Maybe they'll reach out to you and see if you can be a part of the squad or something. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Should we get into like the big topics now?
Just an hour and 10 minutes of preamble.
Well, we had to warm you up. We had to get the gears turning, and then we had to get the chat rolling. We're good. Okay. All right. So let me flip over to here. All right. So you recently interviewed over on your channel, which everybody should be just subscribed to if they're not already, which they probably are, over on the WP Minute. You recently interviewed Mr. Kevin Geary. And how did that go?
It was great.
Start off there. Nice.
Yeah. It was great. It was the first time I, connected with him. Shared his perspective on things. I just, I'm not a front end, developer. I don't know the stuff certainly as good as he does in CSS and front end design, and certainly how to use bricks. But it was interesting to get his perspective. I agreed with out of the gate. Obviously, his personality resonates with a lot of folks who are not being served by that personality, which is like, let's go. We're building this thing. I'm going to show you how to do it. This is the best way. It's the best way because, and that sort of like boot camp style thing, which I actually appreciate. That's the way I kind of like to learn too. He serves, that audience really well. Everybody knows, including Kevin himself, that he can certainly rub people the wrong way. It's in his comments. He admits it. And one or two times I've seen him go a little too overboard, where I was like, that's just an unprofessional approach, especially for somebody who I would consider that he considers himself a leader in the space, a leader of front end web design, bricks usage, his products, and his point of view about building websites. We chatted about that before I hit record. It is the first time I've ever had to have that conversation with somebody that I was interviewing, because largely I would just be like, no, I'm not going to, like, this person I'm not going to interview. And this goes back many more years ago, where there was a lot of like internet marketing type people who were just there to, scam the audience. I'm talking many years ago, where, I knew they were just there to like sell stuff to my audience, and therefore we never had the conversation. But I think Kevin has an important point of view. He brings an important point of view in for WordPress, like core and usability, and of course how to build websites. So I just told him before we hit record, hey, look, I'm just going to address this in the beginning. I mean, it's just me morally, I need to say this. I don't think you need to apologize for anything if you don't want to. And then we had the discussion. And then once we had the discussion, it was good. And I feel like he struggled with the same thing that I struggled with in the early days of, hey, I'm putting myself out there. I'm putting a lot of this content out. I'm putting out my point of view. I have all these people that sort of believe in me and in my work, and we're all like moving in the same direction. But you, the core WordPress, say leadership team, are not reciprocating, right? And that's a feeling that I still have today, right? There's like a lot of things where it's just like, oh yeah, like media core. I've been covering WordPress pretty deeply for like 12 years, and now you finally want to reach out and like see value in the work that myself and many others have been doing for many years without, recognition. So it's easy to feel like them against us against them. But I also can see both sides, that this is just the way that open source moves. It's the way that WordPress moves, massive project, et cetera, takes time. So I kind of like saw, pretty evenly with him on that. Like, yeah, sometimes I feel like nobody's paying attention to the content that I put out either. So, made sense to me. And then we talked about the Bricks stuff, which was obviously the bigger debate of, is Bricks doing it better? Is WordPress core doing it better? Is another page builder doing it better? Or can we just all sit back and say, hey, we're all winning here? I mean, you might have your qualms with Gutenberg, but maybe there's a portion of people out there that are like, hey, this works. Yeah, it might not be the level of web standard, and maybe it's not fair to say that level of web standard should be passable from such a massive project. You can have that debate, but the idea is, in an open source world, like, we're all winning because Bricks can just walk in and be like, here you go, here's my solution, and for $600, $500 a year, whatever the price is, you can have this too. And to me, that's a win, because WordPress is still flexible enough for that to happen, and it gives us that opportunity. So all in all, thought it was a fine discussion. I would love to keep bringing him back, because it was like the next day where he was making a tweet, and I was just like, God damn. Like, oh man, I want to go back and be like, hey, Kevin, I think we should have another talk because we should talk about this other stuff. I think every time I do a conversation like this, whether either Mullenweg or Syed or when Pippin Williamson was in the game, like everybody always wants something else. Like they want the fire, they want more push. Some people just like to see the world burn, so they enjoy content like that. But my thing was, hey, we had the conversation. You can draw your opinions on his answers on a lot of this stuff, and take it from there.
Yeah, definitely a good summary there. Obviously, I watched it. I thought it was good. I think we talked about. I think you and I talked about it briefly after offline, and the one part that I want to hit on, not really topic oriented, but just more of kind of like a style, because I think this is like I'd be interested to get more people's opinions on this. Is the idea, this concept of an interview versus a debate, so to speak, and I think that you are. I mean, you would, I think, classify that as more of an interview than a debate, and you're obviously a skilled interviewer and just a questioner of how do you do this? What do you do that? Like those types of things, and where you stand on these types of things. What is your thought process though on the difference between interview and debate, and do you think they're both necessary? Do you think one's more productive than the other? How do you wrap your head around that with your content and just in general the stuff that you'd like to see more of maybe in WordPress?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff I do is interview style. Kevin and I had just literally met that time, and it was. I'm sure it was probably weird and awkward for him for me to be like, before we hit record, I'll give you the option to not record with me, right? Because I do want to say about this one incident, and I want to bring it up. I'm just bringing it up because morally I cannot continue if I don't say it. It would just be like if some sleazy product company came to me and was like, we want to sponsor your content. And I'm like, no. And we'll give you $20,000. No. I just morally will not put it out. So it was the first time we met. I'm sure it was awkward at first for him to hear that. And I didn't want him to feel trapped because I wouldn't want to feel trapped either. And I wasn't even really trapping him. I just was conscious of the fact that here's this guy coming on, the show, and I just didn't want him to feel like it wasn't accommodating in having a healthy conversation. Now, my stuff is mostly interview. Who are you? What do you do? Generally with him, everybody knows who he is and what he does, and then we talk about it. Do I think debates are helpful? Yeah, I'm sure debates are helpful. From the front end coding stuff, I wouldn't be able to debate them because I don't have an opinion on that. Where I would debate him is maybe and we did talk about it, is the use of a page builder, regardless if it's Bricks or Elementor or whatever, in the middle of a client project, right? And what that means for the client and what it means for the business, the agency, right? You as the agency owner. And we talked about that with version control. And that was the tweet that he brought up, was people talking about content and having customers edit content. And Brian Kors jumped into that thread as well, where he talks about, hey, I don't think maybe people should be clients shouldn't be editing their content and their sites in this day and age, which, yeah, for a particular set of customers, 100%. And if that customer's like, I don't want to touch this thing, you do it, I'll gladly pay you to make the content edits, then yeah, that makes 100% sense. But it's a big world out there, and there are a lot of different types of projects. And for a lot of our bigger projects, customers wanted us to build them a thing specifically on WordPress so they could do that. He brings up great points of the impact of what happens when somebody changes content. Yep, absolutely. But as an agency owner, it was up to me to say, you can do it. Here's the guardrails. And here's how much it costs to work with us in a monthly retainer fashion, right? And that's how I built my agency business on the higher end. The lower end, yeah, those people weren't logging in. They weren't touching their sites. And the whole thing about version control, which I think obviously gets overlooked, is I brought up in the interview business continuity. At my projects wasn't just one person building a website. It was at minimum 2 people, or actually 3 people when you count the project manager, on every single project. So it was a project manager overseeing everything, and then it was the front-end designer and a front-end developer, no matter what, on the bigger projects. For people to be able to see what was happening, again, you got to go back, this was 10 years ago. I don't know what Bricks has in it today for version control or a way to see comments or to see how the site is evolving. Either way, it would just be on the front end of the site. The back end of the site, if we're building a custom plugin, some custom integration that didn't exist, all of that stuff we were using Bitbucket, but it was in Bitbucket and it was version controlled, and you would see the comments. It would be no different than like if you went to GitHub to see what happened with the new version of WordPress 6.6 and to look at the comments and go, oh, okay, this is why this is why this feature was published. Yeah. This is what happened when they made this change. Here's who did it. Here's the code they used. Here's the difference of the code that was committed from the last version to the new version. You could visually see the changes. That is such a core component to like business continuity, where if all of a sudden your front-end developer's gone out of the picture, they quit, they leave, go on to another job, or you just need to bring another person into the project, how else do you monitor that? How else do you scale that? Like, to me, it's like there's no like conspiracy theory over version control. It's how software is made, and I hope the software that he's using, that he's building, I assume is in GitHub or some version control as you build it, so that your team is like, oh yeah, these are the code changes. Like, I don't think it's like this big crazy thing. It's just once you get to a certain level, do you continue to use these types of tools, Bricks, Elementor, Beaver Builder, or do you just build it by hand and it's a version control world? And version control just doesn't mean that you can't use a page builder either, because we had mostly people building custom plugins or custom integrations with our higher end projects. So yeah, it might be just like some default off-the-shelf theme for this project, but the plugin we were building, certainly all version controlled. How do you roll back and test things and features? And that's how you do it. Use GitHub or use Bitbucket or whatever. So anyway,
I think this is probably my my least favorite part of like creating content in this space, is that it's almost impossible to make content. I mean, it's probably in other industries, but it's almost impossible to make content without like pissing somebody off.
Oh yeah,
in a sense, because, and it's not like it's unwarranted. It's the fact that like I have an idea in my mind of the clients that I'm talking about in my mind when I say the word client, and then somebody watches that, and then they're like, oh wait, that's not the client that I have in my mind. That's not like the average client that I'm thinking about in my mind. Because we've talked about this. I think we had a whole live stream right over on your channel where there's like different types and levels to it, right? And where you want to go, obviously, as your agency, who you want to serve. So I think like a lot of times when Kevin is talking, he's talking about like, I guess like, I think small businesses, I guess, I don't know if that's how you want to describe it. Yeah. I don't know, like websites between, you know, like the $10,000 and $100,000 mark. We're not talking like whatever 10up is doing here for millions of dollars. So like a question that I pulled out of what you were saying there is just as a comparison from like, you know, a few years ago, like when you had the agency, do you think that are some of the things that you were doing then, do you feel like maybe you were doing them custom because they didn't exist pre-built now? Is that at all fair to say?
I mean, yeah, a lot of the stuff didn't exist, but I would say that the stuff that we were doing still, you know, doesn't, air quotes, exist today. And even if it existed, you know, one of the a perfect example of this is the lesson I learned really quick. We talked about this, is back then people were coming to us to do business directories, real estate companies, like a directory of inventory that somebody could do. So we're doing like tourist sites, real estate sites, you know, small e-commerce sites or unique e-commerce sites that, you know, we weren't using WooCommerce back then for whatever reason, but anything where you could just have like a bunch of content and you could filter it, you could search for it, and then they had different custom fields for it. I learned the lesson the hard way on our first project where I was like, never built a directory before, but I can buy this plugin for $50 off of Code Canyon. And it says it's a business directory. So certainly it's going to be there. And then I bought it, we used it, and my developer was like, this thing is the biggest piece of junk I've ever seen in my life. It's not coded well. It's not optimized when we need to make changes. It's impossible. And then there's no updates, and it's slow, and things are not optimized. And that was the first lesson, like, oh my God, I'm never making that mistake again. So it was just build it by hand.
I have to stop you though, because I feel like obviously I wasn't like deep into the space probably around like the time period that you're talking here. But here's what I would say is, I feel like now, maybe then, but now especially, if you asked me to build you a directory like that, right, like a Tourist directory or something, my first thought, if I was going through the progressions, I don't even think about that option anymore, because I've obviously been burned kind of as well. Like I thought, oh yeah, we could get a theme and like we could just do whatever and like it's just plug and play. It's never that simple, okay? And like that's actually where I feel like a lot of people talk about where they come from when they talk about these things. It's like, hey, listen, I've made this mistake before. Please don't make this mistake of doing something that's like so boilerplated like this, like just so standardized and is hard to change, because here's what's going to happen. Either you or your client is going to come up with one idea that is so simple and so like, wow, I can't believe this fucking thing doesn't have this. And then you're going to like kill yourself because you can't like either code it yourself, or there's no easy way to integrate with something else to make that happen. I mean, it happens literally every time you try to do something that's out of the box like that. So my go-to now is, I'm not a developer. I'm not going to like sit down and be like, oh, well, I need a tourist directory. I'm just going to pop up VS Code or XYZ or whatever. My thing is like, I have crafted a suite of tools that allow me that are reputable, as optimized as possible, good code and all that sort of stuff. But they offer me like a plethora of things that I can do that aren't like, every single time I use one of these tools, it's like I almost feel like this has never been created, even though it's giving me the power to do this. Like Crock-a-Block Jet Engine is a great example. Like they have so many suites of different tools, and again, some of them you can use, some of them you should use, some of you can use for different things or whatever. But the idea is that it kind of gives you pieces of things rather than the whole solution. So then you can craft your own solution, and obviously it can be very customized to your needs and everything like that. And I just think like that is the middle ground between off the shelf and custom coded. So like, is that something you ever kind of experienced or that you think is applicable? Or obviously it still lacks certain version controlling features and things like that.
But the version control is not the cure to this. It is recognizing what the customer wants and recognizing the how critical this feature is. So if it was, Joe Real Estate comes to us and he's like, my max budget is, I'm just throwing numbers out here, but my max budget is $8,000. I need to build this thing. Would we go the route of putting tools together to make that happen? Absolutely. So whatever, Jet Engine, ACF, Page Builder, whatever. Like, would we come up with that? Well, we evaluated, of course, but let's just say we said yes to it. We would say, okay, here's a solution for this price. Are we profitable? And does this serve the client? And then we just have to let the client know that these changes could be maxed out, right? Like, here's your requirements for the project. Okay, if you've given me all the requirements for the project and you don't think you're ever gonna evolve this feature, then we can do it with these tools.
That's a scary game.
Right, at this cost. Now, if there's a bigger customer that comes to us and they have a budget and this thing is super critical to their business, we had a big tourist site or travel site that we worked with. We would never use those tools to put that solution together because, one, they understood tech. Two, they knew what they knew they needed something custom. They wanted WordPress. They wanted WordPress for the publishing capabilities, but then they knew there was no solution, like off the shelf solution to make this thing that we were making for them. So we build them a custom plugin that does all that stuff because that's a proper way of doing things. So instead of taking 5 or 6 plugins off the shelf from 5 or 6 different brands that each have their limitations, that have a different area where they cap out, we just build them the custom plugin. And that plugin is the thing that solves it. So now that's where you introduce version control, because that's a critical component. Just like all these other plugin companies are making are using version controls to build their software, we're doing the same thing when we're building custom plugins.
Okay, well, I got two questions there. One, how did you what other you named some factors there, but what other factors actually played into that? I'm not asking you to tell me what the price of that project was either, but like I feel like the cost has to go up dramatically when you say I'm gonna instead of using Jet.
Well, of course it is. It's going to go up.
Yeah,
it's going to go up because you have a developer building you a custom plugin.
For sure. But like what? I mean, I guess everything is just worth what anybody is willing to pay, obviously. But I'm saying like, what other factors were in there that you guys decided that was the way to go? Was this already like a very established business too, that they were like willing to invest in a completely custom solution?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the budget to build, again, I don't know the specifics, but I don't remember the specifics of what their budget was back then, but it was probably in the ballpark of, we had already built them a site, a front end site, and then they won this whole thing on like connecting up to all these booking services, all this other stuff. So it's like a year into this project, we're just maintaining it for them. And then they come to us and they say, okay, now we need to build this feature for the site. It does not exist off the shelf. So we build you a custom plugin. That number was probably 20K. I don't remember, but roughly probably 20K. And then do you plan on building more features? Is this, you treat it like it's like software companies serving another software company. Like, do you have other versions that you're interested in the future? Yeah, we want to enhance this. Maybe we'll have user profiles. They can save the different locations that they went to, but we don't need that right now. We need this right now. So in the future, we're going to extend it out to all these other features. Okay, great. So we'll start with this custom plugin. This will be version 1, and we'll build it for you. Get it on the site, do your thing, and then when you're ready for the next version, you come back to us. And that's like business continuity, because they come back like 6-8 months later, a year later. You're like, what the hell? I don't remember how this plugin was built, right? So you go back and you see, you have your history of building the plugin. Version control is not like this. It's just a way of building software. All the software companies you just mentioned, how you build your site, are using version control to build their plugins.
Well, no, yeah, 100%. But I feel like there's a distinction here though, because like, when you said earlier that Joe the plumber or whatever for $8,000, I mean, did you version control that website?
Every site that we did a custom, yes, because back then there was very rarely were we using Beaver Builder unless it was like a super cheap site, small budget. So like everybody had a GitLab, Bitbucket, a Bitbucket repo with every single project.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still a little lost. And I did a version control live stream with Brian, which was extremely helpful. Back a couple months ago, I feel like. But like,
I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying that's the way that we did it.
Well, I feel like you have to for software, no doubt.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't make any sense not to. And I think everybody agrees with that. But like but to me though, like for WordPress, Derek said WordPress has revision control, but not necessarily version control per se. That's kind of like light, I feel like. So my thought is like, we're having this discussion, but like, it's not even, is it like, even how possible even is it in some of the aspects of like WordPress, like WordPress, just general WordPress development, like unless you're doing completely custom stuff?
It depends on like what the severity of custom is, for you. Like if you're using a page builder, chances are like your edits and stuff like that are saved in a page builder. We always had a default theme that we started with when we built a customer project. Back then they were called widgets. They weren't called blocks, right? And from an average type of project, like we knew where we were starting with one of our themes. And, I don't know, maybe the 10, 20 modifications you make in bricks for like colors and fonts and, just basic stuff. If you were building a basic website, we were writing it style CSS, deployed to style CSS, and it was version controlled for for the simple fact that we wanted continuity for ourselves, so that, again, if the customer came back to us and said, oh, we now want to change, I don't know, this to blue, or why was this blue? Or, we have a record. It was really just from the business sense, from the customer comes back to us and go, why, a new marketing manager here, why is this blue? Well, February 2017, you asked for this logo to be blue, right? This font to be blue. We see it, we deployed it. Scott, our front-end developer, deployed it on this date with this message. Customer requested, this was changed to blue. That's really it.
Okay,
it's not like magic. Yeah,
I got you. No, I mean, I pretty much understand like the concept of like obviously what version controlling down. I'm just thinking about like why there's disconnects, or like how. So back then, your general process was a pretty custom solution that was version controlled. Obviously, you're literally writing code and doing stuff, whether it's custom plugins or what have you, and then you deploy that, like you launch that. And I think you've told me you basically were building the block editor before it existed, right? Mm-hmm. So was the reason you built that because you were doing custom stuff and the client didn't really have an interface that they could interface with to change it, to like modify it? Is that part of the reasoning?
Yeah,
okay.
There was no, yeah.
So there wasn't that. Obviously, the block editor now in its current form has kind of changed some of that. Obviously, like we've seen like things like, videos like Brian where he's like putting different things very easily into the toggles and doing stuff. Okay, cool. So that's all making sense. So, but even back then, like, are you giving your clients the options? Maybe technically it was tougher, but are you giving your clients the option to change things like layout, structure, and stuff like that?
I mean, back then,
somewhere you're trying to go.
Again, where does this client fall? So if you go back many years ago, Studio Press was like the de facto place to get like commercially sound themes, right? And by commercially sound, I mean, who's building these themes, and that it's getting invested in. Like, my thing about page builders is always like we saw with Quickly, it can all of a sudden just go out of business, and now you have all these sites that you built. At the nucleus of your website is this plugin that no longer exists. Now it's back for free. And I was looking at the forums yesterday, and somebody was asking like, well, how long is support? And he's like, don't worry, we have a couple of years to support you. What the hell does that even mean? Like, that's how I'm gonna put just that statement where you says, don't worry, there's enough here for a couple more years. That's going to be the basis I make my decisions of my business on? No, thank you. I want people to survive and be in business and charge good rates so that you will be in business and invest in the product. Anyway, but largely we were starting with a design. So we would have a designer come with the design. So is this a real custom design? Like, we're starting from scratch on a brand new branding, logo, we're building something that's never been built before, and they're giving the PSDs. The PSDs are going to the front-end developer, and the front-end developer is making the HTML and the CSS to build the theme, right? So bigger design projects, there was minimally 4 people, on a project. But if they were like, don't really have a budget, we'd be like, okay, here's, let's say, Studio Press, and then we start getting into building our own themes. Here's the framework, just like when you're building in bricks and you have your patterns or whatever they call them in bricks, patterns to make the decisions. Templates. We would present that template to the customer and be like, here's what you can choose from. Does this layout work for you? Yes or no? And then we would just start building from there. But that's a long way of saying like, no, these tools didn't really, page builders and stuff like that. Certainly blocks and things were not a thing.
Okay. Let's round out this part of this by going back to these tweets for a second, because I think we've talked a lot about some different stuff, but I think there's still some really important points to hit on here. So like, kind of more like super high level rapid fire type things. Like, obviously it's still nuanced, but like, I think if I could summarize Kevin's position, is that he doesn't want, and again, it's for his specific client type. And obviously, as soon as you get above a certain level, like if a marketing team is involved, they're probably going to want to handle it. So we have to like get rid of those people, because this obviously doesn't particularly pertain to them. But I have to think that there is a shit ton of people building websites for people under that barrier of people that want to edit their website, like marketing teams. Like once you get to a level of business where they have a marketing team and they're gonna kind of like you're gonna hand it off to them in a sense. The people underneath there's got to be a ton of those clients out there that people are building websites for. So that's, I think, the avatar that Kevin's talking about here. And in a lot of ways, I really appreciate what Kevin preaches here, because I think that our job as like an agency owner, freelancer, like a professional in this space, is to provide and be the authority on the things that we are professionals at. But I mean, I also see the idea of letting your clients edit the stuff if they want to. I just think that, like, I don't know. I haven't really had, most of the time I have people come to me and just be like, yeah, Mark, change this stuff or do this thing. And I think that Kevin's tweet here kind of like, basically I'm summarizing, you guys should go read this. I dropped it in the chat earlier. Like, it's kind of where that's coming from. And he's not really talking about, the example he gave was the headline. And then Brian's response to it was more about like, version control isn't about content, it's about structure, layout, design, functionality. I feel like there is two separate things there. Like Kevin's thinking of it more from like a sales marketing side of, hey, like we put the time and energy into like put this site together for you that we know it's going to sell based off of our experience in your industry. And then Brian is saying stuff about like the structure, layout, design, which makes total sense from like the coding aspect of that version controlling. Am I missing a part in the content part? Is that where the revision control or
revisions are revisions. Revisions are revisions in your content, right? That's just, here's what changed in the content. You see that in WordPress, you see that in Google Docs, right? That's revisions of the content, but it's no different. It's somewhat similar to version control for custom coding. I just think that it's literally just a foolish, foolish is not the right word. It's not really something that you probably want to debate, because there's nothing wrong with version control is not a problem. Like even on a smaller client, if you were building sites where you were deploying to, let's say, just the style.css, it's simply a ledger that says, here's the change. So even if you had small clients that you were doing all the work for, I would argue, why not have version control on your projects? Because you look at your clients, they don't just disappear, right? You don't build them a website and they're gone. Probably your best clients are with you 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years as you grow your agency. Why not have a ledger of changes that were made, to the theme or to a custom plugin that you were building, so that you knew, like, yeah, 3 years ago you asked me to make this change. But it's such a minimal thing. Like, I don't even think it's like debated. So like version control is not a bad thing. It's not like you have to do it. But it is also just like something that is logging the changes happening to a piece of software or a website or a style sheet. Functions PHP file.
I think part of it, I'm speculating here, but is because I don't think Bricks and page builders really necessarily do version controlling. I'm actually
That's correct.
confused slightly on how that would even happen, because if I'm mistaken, isn't this stuff being written to the database rather than actual
yes.
files?
But that's, yeah, and that's where you take that level of how critical is this thing you're building for that customer. So even if Bricks had version control built in, which I think he said has, some way of like seeing what people have changed. Okay, great. But Bricks is also a component where everything's saved to the database. And what happens if you stop using Bricks? You've lost all of that, right? You've lost all of like those front end changes and understanding like what happened to the website. I guess you could make the argument of like, well, I don't care what happened to the website. We're moving on to something else. Okay, that's fine. I mean, that's totally fine to have that discussion, but I don't want to have that discussion with my client, right? That's the kind of discussion I will not have for any highline client who's paying you to be a professional and to help them build this thing on the web. That's just me, right? And or also your image. You know how it goes, man. Customer loves you. You built that solution for them. You built them that directory, 5 different plugins. Hey, Mark, we're going to move on from you. We're moving to another agency. They're going to be doing more work they're going to do something else for us. You don't know. There's all of a sudden they surprise it. Hey, great working with you. We're moving to this bigger client or this bigger agency. Agency gets it. They go, this fucking guy, look at this guy did 5 different plugins to build this. Tells the customer. Customer doesn't know, right? Well, you look at this guy, use 5 different plugins. Oh, you don't have the licenses for this stuff anymore. And then it's just communication, this whole breakdown. Like you want to avoid that risk when it comes to your top level clients. That's the way that I perceive it.
I mean, I get where you're coming from there. I just feel like that. I personally don't know if I could actually worry about that, because couldn't you just custom code something and they give you then the next agency would just say the same shit about you? Like, oh,
but the next agency, yeah, but at least the next agency would say, okay, we have a standalone plugin to do this. Now that same agency could say, let's go buy 5 different plugins to do it, right? And then tell the customer that.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying.
Yeah.
I just don't see anyone doing that. Like, maybe I'm in the wrong circles, like right now. Maybe I'm not charging enough for websites or doing like enough custom coding. I just feel like maybe it was obviously different then, 100%, because there wasn't nearly as many tools. And I'm not saying it's good or bad that we have more tools now, but it has opened like a lot more doors of opportunity. I like, we're having these conversations, I feel like, that are kind of like intermediate to advanced level on some of these things, because we're getting deeper into the nuances and like thinking about things almost before they happen, or with like bigger projects or whatever. And a lot that I don't even have personal experience with, but I'm understanding the concepts. And I'll look at Facebook, I'll look at, other types of groups and stuff like that. And it's like, these people are not doing any of that. Like, it's all just page builder or simple, again, block themes or what have you, and just totally different. And then it really comes back into the AI conversation a little bit, because it's like, well, and this is again something that Kevin talks about a lot of time, is this idea of like, we need to like understand more of what's going on, or like kind of like be like more professional in that type of way. Because then if you're not providing like extra value, so to speak, to the client, then what's going to happen when they could just ask Claude to build a website and they can have it in 2 seconds, and at least they have something? Because again, they don't give a shit, right? Like, I mean, do they really care like about the stuff that we care about? It's just like a weird kind of like, I'm not saying it's going to go like that, but it's a weird line of logic that you could follow, and maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't.
The only thing, so wrap up, and my only, pushback, and I'm not a fan of like, I'm not criticizing Kevin, but I think I'm doing it professionally and politely, is for him to be so absolutist on his point of view, like in that tweet. It's like, absolutely, this is the way. That is the only issue I have, because that is just one type of client. So I agree, that type of client never touches, you don't edit the content, fine. But it's a big world out there, and there are clients that you need to work with that need access to that content, who want version control, for example. I just don't agree with being so absolutist, like this is the way or the highway, or you're a chump if you do it this way. Like, I'm the kind of okay, great, that's your way, but I don't say that everybody has to do it my way either. I just feel like he's so over the top on like, this is the way. But then also in my live stream, he doesn't touch e-commerce sites. And so, okay, but that could introduce a whole other thing. So how could everything be so absolute in this direction? Just be like, here's how I do it, and it works for this client.
Yeah, well, I think also in your live stream, didn't you ask him if he would use bricks on a certain site, and he said flat out, like, bricks is not for every site. Like, you gave him like an example like that. So I'll give him a little credit there for sure. I mean, I appreciate anybody, whether it's Kevin or anybody, like actually having an opinion and speaking, like putting it into frame, and then, because that's how we get better too. Like, we need to have all of that out there, so we can make judgments and have conversations and see what's working, what's not working, and things like that. So, we got a couple more comments here. Changing between agencies is so challenging on handling site builds and reducing technical debt. Again, it's all to serve your client and your team, and how you prefer to build. Yep, 100%. Peter, good to see you, brother. The nature of WordPress pretty much dictates that there are are few, if any, absolute truth, just just strong opinions. That's fair, definitely as well. I think there's always like more than one way to do things. I think Kevin is so absolute. It's just his style. He is passionate about what he does and how he does it. Definitely. Passion is great. However, sensationalism, aggressiveness, and lack of tolerance for nuance can undermine excellent points otherwise being made. Yeah, I mean, I would just say more debate, more discussion. I think that's how we're gonna kind of win this. And speaking of winning this, let's talk about Webflow and what they're doing here. All right, Matt, I have some interesting thoughts on this that are probably going to deviate
I have
slightly.
4 minutes, by the way.
Okay, 4 minutes. All right, rapid fire. Give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on the Webflow thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is par for the course with a lot of these things. I saw a lot of folks being like, "Hey, come to WordPress," where it's where all you have to do is get a host and WordPress is free. That argument is not correct either, because it's certainly not. The software is free, but whoever this person is spent some time building their Webflow site. They're not just going to recoup that instantly. But yeah, this is par for the course. This is the thing that you don't know it until you finally hit that wall where the rules can change and the costs can be dramatic. So where you think you're going in at $50 a month, $600 for a year, whatever the cost is, then suddenly get hit with this. Those are things that are less likely to happen in WordPress, but also the upfront costs are probably much greater for an individual like this, because maybe Webflow was enough for them to build it themselves, whereas WordPress, it would have cost them thousands of dollars to hire a professional to build it.
I think this warrants maybe like its own like kind of video or topic or whatever. So I apologize that we left this for the end here, guys. But I think on a high level for me is I don't. How do I phrase this? I think this is absolutely okay for Webflow to do. Like, I don't mind that they're doing this. I don't want somebody to say that you can't do this, at least on the surface. I don't want somebody to say like, oh, you can't change your prices and freedom change your prices. I would much rather have Webflow be fully able and like legally able to do what they're doing, which I don't think there's anything, but I'm not advocating for that. What I think is going to happen, and what I would encourage people to do, is to put up tweets like Nico did here and express how disgruntled he is about this, because I think that tweets like this are going to help us, what we were talking about earlier, where it's like, well, if Webflow it's just based on pure like almost capitalism or free market. Like, if Webflow is screwing these people over and they feel like they're being screwed over, they're going to look for an alternative. Hopefully they don't go to Framer. Like I saw some other people say, it's like going from Webflow to Framer. We're like, what? But like, this right here to me is a huge opportunity. These types of things we need to constantly remind. I saw other people do it. I think Andrew posted a tutorial on how to move from like Webflow to WordPress, like right after this, through the link up there. This is the opportunity we have to be like, hey guys, listen, Webflow seems like an okay platform, okay, but they're kind of screwing you here. Maybe it's time to just take a peek over at WordPress that doesn't charge you for a number of CMS items, or something like that. Like the only thing I would say like is slightly, I don't know if it's necessarily abusive. Like, I mean, there's definitely some nuance there. I wouldn't do this as a company, but I don't think they shouldn't be allowed to do it. I just think that your actions.
Well, you don't want them to
dictate how
you don't want to wake up one day and have a $15,000 bill. You want to be able to, like when I log into a hosting dashboard, to see my usage meter, moving and be alerted to the fact that you're about to spend $500, never mind $15,000.
1 week is definitely not enough time to make this type of change. I don't know who okayed that. 1 week is absolutely not enough. I mean, I would like to see maybe like at least a few months, 6 months or something, would be great. 1 week is a little ridiculous in this field. But this doesn't, I mean, again, this doesn't really look good for, like the people like at Webflow that say like, you can just port your site elsewhere. Well, maybe it's time to port your thing elsewhere, because like, I guess it's cool they give you that option, but like, yeah, 1 week is kind of crazy. So I don't know. Hopefully these guys, everybody that's affected by this, I don't even think it's that big too. Like they reduced, I watched a video from Webflow and Code. another creator, they reduced the bandwidth and increased the prices. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So
in that world, like the Webflow world, there's plenty of businesses who the cost doesn't matter because it's cheaper than, using Microsoft SharePoint or Adobe's Orchestra, whatever the hell it's called for the web. I forget what Adobe's product's called. And that's why Webflow wins, right? In terms of like revenue. Yeah. And that model, I'm sure he could have just probably turned to them and be like, how about I just pay you $500 instead? It's like going to collections. How about I just pay you $500 instead? And they go, okay, because that's just the model of that business, and it's just not one that I'm interested in.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot there. I'm sure we'll talk about it because I'm sure it'll happen again, and more things will kind of go over. But I don't want to keep you. I know you. Congratulations, you survived the marathon. This has been great. Thank you so much for coming on, Matt. Again, for anybody that might not know where you're normally spend your time and everything like that, please let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, thewpminute.com and gravityforms.com.
Nice, sweet. Well, this is a blast, man. Really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll talk again soon, online or offline.
I'm sure we'll debrief momentarily.
Yeah. I'll send you a couple voice memos over in Slack. It'll be great. Guys, appreciate you all being in the chat. Thank you so much for the engagement. Hope you enjoyed it. Smash that like button. We'll talk to you in the next one.